What's good, everyone? This is Justin Just Rock Ramon from the Just Right podcast, where elevation is our recreation. Super excited for you to check out our next episode, but before we get into it, I have two exciting event announcements I'd love to share with you. This summer, our good friends over at Highlander Adventure got an incredible backpacking experience for the SoCal outdoor community. From June 17th to the 21st, Highlander, a hiking event series that is present in 20 plus countries worldwide, returns to Big Bear Lake, California for its fourth epic year. Choose your challenge from 14 to 82 miles and experience between a 1 to 5 day hike through the San Bernardino Mountains with all the logistics and safety taken care of by the organizers. Celebrate your daily achievements each night at beautiful campgrounds that feel like a festival in the wild with yoga, massages, fireside talks, and stargazing. Get 20% off any individual registration except Lyra format with code JustTrek_HL20 at checkout on HighlanderAdventure.com. For my second announcement, if you love the trails of the Santa Monica Mountains and our California public lands, I invite you to join me this National Trails Day on Saturday, June 7th for a community celebration entitled Trails Forever. This special evening is hosted by the Santa Monica Mountains Fund and celebrates the launch of a vital program to restore, preserve, and reimagine our trail systems for generations to come. This event will be held at the beautiful King Gillette Ranch in Calabasas, California, and will feature keynote speaker Josh Jackson, author of The Enduring Wild. Enjoy wine and refreshments, a silent auction, and connect with fellow conservation-minded trail lovers. Every dollar raised supports trail maintenance, fire recovery, and creating more inclusive access to the outdoors. Reserve your spot now at samofund.org/trails-forever. Registration links to both events are in the video description. Now to get back to the episode, my incredible guest goes by the name Josh Jackson, the same person that is the guest speaker at the Trails Forever event I just mentioned. Josh is a SoCal-based trekker, writer, photographer, conservationist, BLM lands advocate, creator of the Forgotten Lands Project, and author of The Enduring Wild. We chatted about Josh's first meaningful memories out in nature, what sparked his deep love for BLM land, the origin story to creating the Forgotten Lands Project and the inspiration behind The Enduring Wild, his top 3 BLM lands in California, tips for exploring these very remote and isolated landscapes, his recent Superbloom camping trip with USAL Project at the Carrizo Plain, his thoughts on the current state of affairs of our public lands and what we can do to protect them. In addition, we talked about how BLM lands are the ancestral homelands of the native tribes, his most special interactions with the wildlife, and the one forgotten land experience that was the most unforgettable for him. In addition to this YouTube video version you are watching right now, we have audio versions available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on all the other major streaming platforms. You can find those links in the description. All right, let's get the trekking and get into this episode. All right, y'all, we are back at it with another episode with another inspiring guest. And we are out here at Ernest E. Debs Regional Park, also known as Debs Park, just northeast of downtown LA. And right here next to me is a most influential figure as it relates to the forgotten public lands of the Golden State. I'm here with none other than Josh Jackson, writer, photographer, conservationist, leading voice of public lands managed by BLM, creator of Forgotten Lands Project, and the author of the upcoming book, Enduring the Wild. So super excited to say, welcome to the Just Right podcast, Josh.
Hey, it's really an honor to be here. I've been listening to this pod for years, so it's kind of surreal that I'm now a guest. So thank you for having me.
That means so much that you're a listener as well. How did you discover the pod?
I think it was probably through social media. You get like the algorithm provides you with what your inner child would want to see. And so like you probably came up on my algorithm and I was like, wait, a nature podcast focused on trails and hiking in LA? Like I'm down. It was years ago. I think we first met each other like a year or two ago.
Yes,
And,
we did actually at Jackson Market, and you're Josh Jackson.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So, I was listening for a while before then, and then, found you and we met, and then, I've been listening ever since. It's such a great pod. It's great to be here.
It means so much. And I believe you had a few friends or people that you were very familiar with that were previous guests on the show?
Yes, Casey Schreiner. I know he was a guest in maybe in the 40s.
Wow, you have a good
40s.
memory. Okay.
That might have been another way that I got introduced to your pod, was listening to, because I follow him on social media and we've sort of become friends over the years as well. So, obviously he's written some amazing books on Griffith Park and hiking in LA. So I knew about his work before I met him as well. So yeah, to have, that might have been another connection that we had
Sure.
listening to the podcast you did with him.
Shout outs to Casey Schreiner, founder of
Yes.
modernhiker.com. It is the one of the internet's oldest outdoor hiking blogs. So, yeah, that was such a special conversation. That's so cool, Casey, that you had that connection with him. Not only was that episode with him really special, we collaborated on a community group hike to Sandstone Peak
Yes.
in the Santa Monica Mountains because it's both of our favorite trails of all time. Yeah, I always find myself listening back to that episode as well. But to bring it back to you, how are you enjoying this podcast studio setting right here we got?
This is pretty special. I mean, Debs Park is my backyard playground. I live in Highland Park, so this is kind of a easy place to come and hike in the mornings, go up to see the turtles up at Debs Pond. I
Yes.
mean, we're surrounded by like Toyon behind us, Deodar cedar, carrot, liquid amber. I mean, we got sycamores, Chinese elm, uh, you name it, we've got it here. So it's just a place, and I mean, hopefully people can hear all the birds going crazy,
And
which
other
is,
things going
and
on.
other random things happening. So yeah, this is like a backyard playground for me and my family. I bring my kids here. We play around. There's a little secret nook over here with a swing that we get to go to, and
Yes.
yeah, it's a pretty special place. So I'm really happy to be at Debs Park.
Well, I'm glad that we chose this location for recording. It sounds like it has deep sentimental meaning for you. And yes,
Yes.
I love Deb's Pond. That's where all the turtles reside. I think it's also referred to as Peanut Lake.
Yes.
Apparently, it looks like a peanut if you look
If you look at
above
it
it.
from above, yeah, it's got the perfect shape of a peanut, you know?
And are you a naturalist? You just dropped a bunch of knowledge right now of like doing plant identification.
I wish I was a naturalist, but I'm on my way, you could say. I've been really working hard at studying the trees in my neighborhood over the last 5 years. I take my daughter on long walks, and we've just slowly been learning the names of the trees. And like it's a powerful thing. Like the more you're connected in terms of a knowledge of a place or a tree or an animal, like the more connected you feel to those places. And
Absolutely.
so just trying to, knowledge intrinsically changes your relationship to place. And so, I want to deepen my attachment to Los Angeles and to the neighborhood I live in Highland Park, and I do the same kind of walking routes every day, and it changes your relationship to those walks if you know all the trees. So,
Yes.
using like a plant identification app on my phone, in iNaturalist, we've slowly, put together the names of all these trees. And Debs Park is really, there's a lot of native trees here, but also a lot of,
Yes.
non-native trees that sort of thrive in like a Mediterranean climate. So yeah, for me, that's kind of like the why I've tried to slowly learn the names of the flora and fauna that I'm, surrounded by at all times. People think of nature sort of being out there, um,
Correct.
which is true. It is out there, but it's also in here.
Yeah.
Like there's these sycamores on that line York Boulevard. Like if you the view from these sycamores wouldn't be much to write home about. It's like a taco shop, a mechanic shop, a couple of bodegas, a smoke shop, and they're bursting with life. They're buried in concrete. I don't even know how they're still alive, and yet like every spring they develop these like beautiful little buds with these silky kind of feathery leaves, and you watch them like grow into massive leaves, and it's like having that knowledge, changes my walk even to go down to get coffee.
I'm so happy you brought this all up because nature is just not out in the deep, remote wilderness. It can be in our very own backyard, literally next to our house or in the city streets that you walk by. You just have to slow down and observe. And that's the cool thing about like, you don't have to be a naturalist to be in that naturalist mode. You can just be on your way. And that's also just as valid and really special because that learning process of observing the things around you, learning how to slow down, I think just really enhances the overall, it just levels up your outdoor journey and nature journey.
Yeah, totally. If you don't look around, you might miss the poppies growing out of the cracks in the sidewalk, you know, and like this busy
True.
street, or the western fence lizard kind of like darting in and out of succulents in somebody's front yard. Like you start to slow down and notice, and it really is it changes your relationship to place.
I also want to recognize and say that it was so wonderful to have you join us at the Just Right Podcast 5-year anniversary celebration back at the beginning of April. And I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you enjoy the event and also the live podcast show that happened in the middle of it?
Yeah, I mean, this was my first, I think the first live show that I've been to. So it
Oh,
was,
ever?
no, of the Just Track,
Oh,
because I
okay.
know you've done had a few years of it, and I've always not been able to go, but this one was really fun. I mean, the setting was beautiful right on the LA River, so you can't really beat that. And then I knew Jacqueline Cosgrove from the LA Times,
Yes.
just from different interactions we've had, and an amazing writer, really great thinker as well, and like the way he writes and thinks about nature is really beautiful.
She's exceptional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exceptional. But yeah, just to be there, um, I'm normally the majority, you know, straight white male in like a lot of these places that I go and recreate, and so to be in a place where I'm in the minority, and to see all these people that
Sure.
have such grounded and intimate relationships with landscapes, whether it's here in LA, or I know some of the people on the panel are from different places. Um, it's just it's inspiring, you know. So I mostly felt really inspired by the guest and like everyone that was there, that was bringing such a so many important ideas and thoughts to the conversation, which I think is so compelling, you know.
Yeah, we had an all-star panel for sure. We had Joshua Walker, Joshua Trippin, like you mentioned, Jacqueline Cosgrove, outdoor reporter. We had Nicole Snail, outdoor defense, CEO of Girls Fight Back, and also Victor Martinez. So shout outs to all of you. Josh was actually in attendance, so I don't know if y'all knew that. And I was so giddy when you were sitting there watching the show because I was like, I just wanted to just like blurt out right then and there, like, yo, we got Josh Jackson, Forgotten Lands Project, future guest. Also, didn't want to say that because I didn't want to jinx it, you know?
Totally, like you know, we'd have a terrible rainstorm or something on every time we'd ever try to
Yeah,
podcast.
exactly. That's at the very end. I was like, oh, I want to say it, but I'll just keep the lid shut for now, and then people will find out. But thank you so much for taking the time to attend the event. That specific community event for me is requires the most effort and work for me out of all the events of the
I can
entire year.
imagine. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like you have so many people there, from like event planning to trucks, coffee,
Yes.
food. I mean, it's just like getting the space. I know they were friends of yours, but still, it's so much work. It's inspiring to just be around someone who's putting out good things into the world.
Thank you. That means a lot because that event feels like two events because it's producing the overall event, but then producing the live podcast show portion. So I'm always like needing extra help or having people to really hold me down because I have to really get into a certain mental headspace because people don't realize I only do that live podcast show once a year. I've only done it for the past 3 years.
Right.
Like I'm not in front of an audience of 50 to 100 people doing these podcasts. It's usually just me and the guests.
Yeah, right.
So it's a completely different dynamic to have to, speak in front of all these people and then speak to the guests. And it's like, when I get up there, I'm just like, okay, Justin, point of no return. Just got to step up, and how you do is how you do, and it'll be enough.
Totally. I mean, life is so goddamn short, you know? Like, we need people who are just putting good work into the world.
I
And
agree.
so when I think of the Just Trek podcast, it's like, that's what I think about. Like, you're out here hustling, putting really good work out into the world, interviewing people that are having important things to say. And what else is life for, you know?
What else is life for? Dude, thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
really warming my heart, and all the flattery is flattery gets you everywhere, right? Shout outs to Happier Cafe by Tadal Coffee for sponsoring that space to us. It was such a
Delicious coffee,
wonderful
too.
community event, and cheers to another 5 years. And maybe we'll have you on maybe a future panel someday.
I'm down. I'm definitely down.
Awesome. All right, Josh. So before we get into all your recent adventures and all your work with your upcoming projects and current projects, I do want to learn more about you and your outdoor journey and dig deeper into that. So I want you to take us back. What would you say was your first meaningful memory out in Mother Nature?
So that's a great question. I grew up in Michigan, in rural Michigan. So I lived like right on the edge of this small town. Sort of the front yard was like the town, and the backyard kind of fell off into this ravine, and there was this little forest down there. I mean, which to me, when I was a kid, felt like, Yosemite or something. But when I look back on it, it's just a tiny little patch of land that had a bunch of trees, a creek flowing through it, and a seasonal creek flowing through it. And because I lived right on the edge of this area, I had kind of it was like a free for all. I could just wander down through the cornfields to get to this woods, and I really had it. It was private property. I don't even know who owned it still to this day, but it's so remote and it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I would just go down there, and those were like my first formative experiences with nature. I remember seeing like a fox. And it's just like, what? There's a fox living down? Like, it just blew my mind, And
Foxes
then
are so awesome
they're
to
so
observe.
amazing.
Yes,
And
they are.
then they're so elusive, to see one in the daytime. I was just like, what is happening? There's that creek that I was describing, like it was, wide enough that you could jump across it. It was never deep, it never flooded, but you could build little dams down there and, just mess around. We'd climb trees, build forts. I mean, it was like we had our own little backyard woods. And that was really the first sort of nature experiences that had an effect on me in Michigan.
So you had that experience in Michigan, and then you traversed your way all to Los Angeles. What brought you out here, and maybe what was a very memorable nature experience when you got to the Los Angeles, Southern California area?
Yeah, I moved out here 20 years ago with my wife and some of our best friends from college. We all just decided to move to LA, for various reasons. My wife was wanting to work in film and television, so this seemed like the place to come. I was doing sort of entrepreneurial work and also seemed like a ripe environment for starting a business. And so we moved out here in 2005, kind of with our whole crew that we went to college with, who are all still living life together out here in LA. But yeah, like I lived in Pasadena, and my backyard trail was the Gabrielino Trail that goes up to like into the San Gabriels, kind of at the foothills of the San Gabriels. It climbs up, 2 or 3 miles to this old hotel that got burned down. And really just doing that once a week, twice a week. When it would snow, we'd go all the way up to Strawberry Peak, and like, not prepared enough, with what we should have had gear wise, but just like marching up there, trying to, surf and ski on the same, or surf and climb mountains on the same day.
You mean surf the loose screed
I
down the
yes,
steep
because I
terrain?
do not surf. I should say that. Just visiting the water and then going up to the mountains, when they're covered in snow. So that was a real gateway to like my first experiences being in nature in Los Angeles. And then I've spent a lot of time walking the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm kind of section hiking it, and I've gone from the Mexico border all the way to where it crosses the Highway 15. So I've done
Okay.
about 300 or 400 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail. Some of that, it follows right behind us in the
It
San
does.
Gabriel. So I haven't done that section yet, but I'm working my way north. So yeah, those were pretty early experiences of being in nature in Los Angeles. And growing up, I always thought of Los Angeles as just this massive city. Had no idea it was surrounded by giant mountains.
Me too, Josh.
No
Me too.
idea.
Me too.
I know you're an East Coaster, right?
I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland. Yeah, so like, I'm from Michigan. I mean, we came west one time. Like, we were always a camping family because that's all we could afford. So our big summer vacations were like camping in state parks in Indiana. One time we came west, we went to Yellowstone, Colorado, and I mean, it was just like awe-inspiring. But I
Yes.
didn't know that there are also 10,000-foot peaks just right above Los Angeles. And we had one of the world's best city parks at Griffith Park.
Yes, we do.
No idea. I mean, Debs Park this place is incredible, and I had no idea that Los Angeles was so full of nature.
It's very mind blowing, and I always love quoting this previous guest. Her name is Mary Forgione, formerly of the LA
The
Times.
LA Times, yeah.
And the quote that she said is that LA's greatest treasure is hidden in plain sight.
Yes.
And what she's referring to, obviously, is the mountains behind downtown LA, behind the Hollywood, behind, in the distance, when you're out in Venice Beach, you see the Santa Monica Mountains. We have so many different mountain ranges. And like what you just said, you're talking about Strawberry Peak, and we have these also 10,000-foot peaks such as Mount Baldy. Like we have an alpine peak in the heart of like one of the largest cities in the world, largest
Yes.
metropolitan cities in the world. Also, just to bring it back real quick, it's wild that you have been here for 20 years because it's rare for me to meet someone that's also been here for the same amount of time. I just hit 2 decades also
That's amazing.
recently.
We should have met like in 2005 and had a little hangout, you
I,
know?
so seriously, I moved here 2004 for college,
Mm.
and I feel like it's just been the wildest ride, and I'm sure that you went through it too. Like, just obviously you come here like to pursue work in entertainment or the commercial world or whatever that creative drive that brings you out here. But oh my God, we have so much in terms of nature offerings, beautiful mountainscapes near the coast, more inland, high elevation peaks. The diversity of trails and terrain is really it's so special here in Southern California.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of take, I mean, I feel like I've been here 20 years and I've hiked all over the place and I've scratched a little tiny part of the surface of what I could experience out here, you know? Like you read Casey's book, the LA Hiking Guide, it's,
Yes.
you know, I've done a lot of those hikes, but there's just hundreds that I still haven't done. It's like endless, you know? It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, even if you get tired of LA County, Southern California, all the surrounding regions, you can
Right.
go towards San Diego, you can go up the coast, you can go to the Eastern Sierras, all the places in between, and all the forgotten public land that you've been specializing in.
Yes.
And actually, that's the perfect segue I just gave myself. What sparked your deep love for BLM land? And perhaps before we even get into that, can you explain like what exactly BLM land is and the whole like public land breakdown?
Yes. So BLM is short for the Bureau of Land Management, so not the sexiest name of all time, but yeah, it's like what is this interesting landscapes? It's like the National Park Service feels like so iconic, you know, and then you have the Bureau of Land Management, which just sounds like people pushing papers across the desk. But yeah, I have 3 kids now, and you know they've grown up in LA their whole lives, and we camp a lot. And in 2015, my friend was, or I was, we had a newborn at home. My 2 older kids we were all dying to get out of the house because you know in those late stages of pregnancy, you sort of hunker down, you don't really leave much.
Sure.
And I looked at all the state parks and national park campgrounds I knew within a 4 or 5 hour drive of LA, and everything was booked solid because I wanted to go that weekend. And I was like, classic, you know, you can't,
So frustrating.
it's hard to get away at the last minute. And so I was talking to my friend Justin. I was like, hey, he always had this knack of pulling campsites out of thin air. And I'm like, hey, do you know where I should go? Everything's booked. He's like, why don't you camp on some BLM land? This was in 2015. And I was like, what's that? I had never heard, even as an avid outdoor enthusiast, I had never heard of BLM land. And I said, well, where is it and what is it and where can I get, how can I access it?
Yeah.
And he said, I think it's out in the desert somewhere. And I was like, okay, that gives me a little start. You know, he
Thanks for
knew,
that tidbit.
yeah, he knew like enough to get me going, but not enough to be like, this is the place that you could go tonight, you know, or this weekend. And that sort of started my journey. I went on the BLM website, which back in 2015 felt like going into the pixelated domains of dial-up that I grew up with, like in the 90s.
That is too funny.
You know,
I know what you're talking about.
small picture files, like very little information. It's kind of like, you know, entering this like old museum that doesn't really tell you where to go or how to get anywhere. So it's gotten a lot better now. But yeah, I looked at this website. I figured I found this place called the Trona Pinnacles, which is out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, sort of southwest of Death Valley National Park. Open dispersed camping, you know, free, accessible with my 2-wheel drive Honda Element that I was rolling with at the time. So my 2 older kids, they were 5 and 2 at the time. We loaded up, went out to the Trona Pinnacles, had this amazing night out there. The Trona Pinnacles are they're called tufa spires, and they're like 200, 300 foot high, but they look like drip sandcastles that you make at the beach. You know, they're just really, really weird looking. And then it's surrounded by these salt flats, so you have these like,
Oh my
my
goodness.
kids felt like they were like, this is like jumping on a trampoline, like you're running but you're kind of bouncing softly. Just a beautiful place that I've gone back to many times. But that was like my introduction to BLM land, and it really started this now 10-year obsession I've had with these landscapes. A little background: the BLM, they're part of our public lands that we all share and own together in America. We have 600 and roughly 20 million acres of public land. There's the National Park Service, so most people are familiar with that: Yosemite, Yellowstone, Joshua Tree. And then you have national forests, which are kind of like up in the Sierra Nevada, really, more higher elevation forested lands. Then you have national wildlife refuges, where we're kind of they're managed for wildlife. And then the largest of those land managers is the Bureau of Land Management. We have 245 million acres across the western states, so more public land than any other of the other land management agencies. And in California, we have 15 million acres of public land that's open and accessible to all. With, I think that at the time of recording, there's like 66 BLM campgrounds in the state of California, but there's hundreds across the West. It started in 1946. It was like a merging of the General Land Office, which at the time was like giving land away out west, and then the Grazing Service. So they sort of melded those two agencies together to form the BLM. And so I guess that puts it at like 80 years old at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that, these lands are our shared lands. Like, I don't own a home in LA, but like, I own this I'm a part of this collective, public land collective that we all own together. It's kind of amazing, in a country where we prioritize private land and owning land so deeply. Like, it's crazy that we've set aside these 620 million acres of land that were shared by all of us, for future generations, for wildlife, for biodiversity. It's pretty special that we have this. But yeah, that trip in 2015 was like my introduction. But I had 3 kids under the age of 6 at the time, and I couldn't get out much besides state park camping. And so I just started reading as much as I possibly could. And then kind of pouring a foundation of understanding for like where these lands came from, why do they exist, and what can you do on them. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, that's when I really started going out to see these landscapes.
Yeah, the Trona Pinnacles. I haven't been there myself yet, but I remember one of my hiking sensei, I like to call her, shout out to Paloma. I remember I saw like the most magical piece of content from her, and it was the Trona Pinnacles. It was either during, I'm pretty sure it was at sunrise, and then how you described it, the drippy sandcastles like at the beach, and then there's
Yes.
salt flats, and I was like, where the hell is she?
Yes.
And then I found out it was the Trona Pinnacles. So that's so rad that was your first introduction to BLM lands. And it's even more fascinating to dive into the history of it. You said it's the largest federal land agency.
Yep.
And how many acres again, you said?
Across the West, it's 245 million acres that they manage.
And in California, do you know the stats
15
on that?
million acres.
15 million.
Yes.
So would you say we're the state that has the most?
No, we are not.
Oh, we're not.
Surprisingly. Like the state of Nevada, I mean, these numbers I think they're right on, but it's 67% BLM land. So if you were to parachute into the state of
Holy
Nevada, the odds are really high that you're going to land on public land managed by the BLM.
I'm sure you heard of Burning Man.
Yeah, so Burning Man
Is that BLM
on
land?
BLM land.
Okay.
In Nevada. Yep.
I think that's Black Rock City.
Yeah, Black Rock. For as much
Or Black
as
Rock, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just Black Rock, but I'm sure there's lots of fun names for it when you're out there.
Yeah.
What it looks like.
So before we go further, I hope you don't mind. I just got to tell you this quick story about my first interaction with BLM land.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's so hilarious. So I think this was like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm just getting into my, my outdoor journey here in like Southern California, and I wanted to go to Joshua Tree for my birthday. Do a camping trip with 2 other friends, family friends. Shout outs Ray and Mark Nieto. And so we go into Joshua Tree National Park. It's my first time. And I think we tried to get a spot at Hidden Valley Campground or Jumbo Rocks. And we pulled up, and I think we found a spot, but it kind of didn't look like a spot. And we ended up wasting all this time setting up and kind of just exploring around that campgrounds. And then it became like nighttime. And then we didn't feel comfortable where we were set up. Also the people that were around us, I didn't think wanted us there. So we were like, you know what? I told my two friends, I was like, hey, let's get out of here. I actually know of like a place we can officially park without any worries or camp. And I was like, I told them, yeah, there's this place called it's like BLM land. It's north of Joshua Tree National Park. It's called Bureau of Land Management, and you don't need any permits. You can just go out there and park your car and set up your shop, set up your tent. We left at night from Joshua Tree, like at 10 or 11.
Oh my
We
God.
leave the park, and then as we're leaving, I'm sure you're familiar, this is the northern side of Joshua Tree. The road is really rickety, and it's just complete darkness. And we're in a Prius. I mean, it worked out okay, but just imagine yourself not knowing what you're doing. You've never really camped before. You've never really been to Joshua Tree, and then you go outside the park to find your camping site in the pitch darkness, and then you're going into the deep abyss, and you don't even know where you're really going. You're just looking at the drop pin, and you're passing by these like those serial killer white cargo vans once in a while, and
Totally,
you're like,
yeah.
should we keep going? Like, this is feeling sketch. And then the road's feeling sketch because it's not really a road,
You're
it's like a
just so
dirt
happy you're
gravel
not by
route.
yourself.
Yeah, and then we finally pull up and we're like, I think we're here. And then we saw like maybe two other cars like far out in the distance, and I was like, okay, this is I can't see anything, so I don't really can't really judge the environment yet. But
Yeah,
it just felt really sketchy getting to that piece of BLM land
yeah.
above Joshua Tree. And then I remember we pitched our setup, our tent, and then we woke up in the morning, and I was like, oh wow, this is like so peaceful, so isolated. There's no one around me like back in the Joshua Tree campground, and there's even like mountain peaks in the distance. And I was like, whoa, this kind of legit. This is special.
That's
So
how a lot of how BLM feels. Like you, especially if you pull in at night, you're not familiar with the landscape, and the waking up part is so fun because you're like, oh my God, this is incredible, you know?
so yeah, I just wanted to insert my first
Yes,
interaction with BLM land because it's definitely like something that's always forever embedded in my mind. And going into this conversation with you, I was like, I got to bring it up to him because it was just like
I think
it's
that's
just a
probably
hilarious
most people's
conversation.
experiences
Oh
on
yeah, okay.
BLM land too, in terms of their first experiences. I think it can be a little overwhelming if if you're not going to like a campground. The dispersed camping options that you have on BLM land can be a little overwhelming because you're not sure like what the rules and regulations are. You're not sure where you should go. For future reference, if you go to Joshua Tree and you're looking for a great BLM dispersed camping area, if you go south, just south of Joshua Tree, it's called Cottonwood. It's between the freeway, the 10 freeway, and the entrance to Joshua Tree. There's like a long stretch of BLM land that's
Uh,
always full of, BLM campers. Then you can day trip into the park from there.
I have heard this, and I wish I knew you back then.
Yes,
Oh yeah, that's what an experience.
that's hilarious.
All right, so let's get into your incredible work that is redefining the way we think about our public lands. And I would love for you to explain what exactly is the Forgotten Lands Project and also the Enduring Wild. Would love to know the origin story and the inspiration behind each.
Yeah, so when 2020 hit and the pandemic hit, I had owned a furniture company, and our retail store had to shut down because we were non-essential. The designers and architects we were working with were sort of like their work was drying up, because no one was delivering anything, no one was shipping anything, and so it just opened up this pocket of time for me to start. Like, I'd always been interested in BLM lands, and I thought, I need to go out there and start seeing these places. Like, I need to document them. I had sort of been learning about the threats to BLM lands. So, in 2017, Trump, it was the first time he ordered the review of national monuments. And
Mm,
national monuments are, many which are managed by the BLM. That was kind of the first time I had understood, like, oh, there's some of our public lands are under threat to different movements and land transfer movement, privatization movement, which we can get into later. But
mhm.
it was the first time I understood these lands as to be a little bit threatened. And so that was sort of what got me to start going to visit these places. And then the pandemic opened up some time in my schedule and in my family schedule. So, I take trips by myself, with friends, with my kids, with our family. And we started getting out there and seeing these places. And because at that point I'd only been to the Trona Pinnacles, really. I didn't really have many experiences out there. I thought maybe the Trona Pinnacles was like the pinnacle of BLM
Sure.
land, like what if it's all kind of not that great after the Throne of Pinnacles.
Oh,
You
so
know,
there was a large gap in between your
a
first
5 year,
interaction.
like a 5 year gap. I had done a few BLM camping trips with some friends in places called Rainbow Basin and Afton Canyon, but that was pretty much the extent of it for 5 years. All I was doing was state park camping and reading as many books as I could that included BLM lands, sort of pouring that foundation of understanding. So in 2020, I started going out there, and it blew my world open. I mean, I had no idea, first of all, how beautiful these landscapes were. I was going all over California, so I'd go from, BLM land in the Mojave Desert to BLM land up in the Lost Coast in far northwest California that, gets 100 to 150 inches of rain a year, which acts like a temperate rainforest. So, and then, you go to the Eastern Sierra, there's BLM lands all along that Highway 395, which is sort
Really?
of a
Okay.
famous, for Californians, it's a famous, one of the more famous highways, all BLM land along that highway. So I was going to these places, documenting them through photography and writing about them. I started an Instagram in like 2021 because I thought, oh, maybe I should start documenting these places. If they are under threat, the idea is maybe more people will experience them and then want to protect them if they get under threat even more. So I started documenting on Instagram, and it was growing from there. And then I thought, well, maybe I should think about writing a book. I've always been a writer, photographer, and I thought maybe this could be a good, maybe there's a story to tell here. So I started, as I was going to all these places, I started interviewing the people that had deep connections, whether indigenous communities or nonprofits that worked with these landscapes, or even like I interviewed a lot of employees that worked at the BLM. So I started gaining a bigger story that was much bigger than just me going to visit these places. And so I wrote a book proposal and sent it out to a bunch of different publishers. I ultimately signed a deal with Heyday Books.
Congratulations. That's
They
awesome.
they were always my number one choice. They're a nonprofit independent publisher based in the Bay Area. They've been publishing beautiful books for decades. I don't know if you're familiar with Obi Kaufman. He'd be an awesome person to have on the pod. He's written some pretty popular books, the California Field Atlas. He's a writer, illustrator. He does a lot of beautiful watercolors. So I was
Okay.
familiar with his work. That kind of connected me to Heyday. So ultimately, I signed a deal with Heyday, and it's been a 5 year process to like document all these places, write a book, and so the book is called The Enduring Wild. It's got over 100 photographs from BLM lands in California, 7 or 8 essays that kind of document the story that I was kind of gaining steam as I went through all these landscapes. The people I met, indigenous storytelling is a big part of the book. Their history on these landscapes and their connection to these places. And so the book comes out June 24. So the pre-order's live now, but
Where can people pre-order the book?
yeah, go to my website, forgottenlandsproject.com, and you can see the book, pre-order it there. That would be a big help instead of buying it on the big A, as we call it.
I have my pre-order in already. We'll make sure
Yes.
to include the link in the episode show notes.
Yeah,
ForgottenLandsProject.com.
yep, forgottenlandsproject.com. So I have this Forgotten Lands Project, which has kind of become a bigger thing than the book. It's really just advocating for these BLM landscapes across the West through immersive storytelling and photography. So I don't know if you're familiar with Baba Diom. He was a Senegalese forester.
Oh yeah, definitely know the name. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a famous quote, but he was delivering this lecture at this forestry conference, and he said, "In the end, we will conserve only what we love." And for me, that is literally driving my entire project. Like, I just believe so wholeheartedly in that sentiment. Like, we are never going to try to protect places that we haven't experienced. And so the mission of the Forgotten Lands Project is to highlight these BLM landscapes through photography and writing in the hope that it will draw more people to visit these landscapes. They're underloved, misunderstood, underappreciated. Like, these lands need more love. And then as people go out there and maybe experience these places for themselves, they'll be more likely to call their congressperson, write a letter, submit a comment to the BLM, share social media posts that talk about the threats these lands face. So yeah, that's the mission of the Forgotten Lands Project. So I have a newsletter that I write 3 Sundays a month where I document sort of BLM lands across the West.
Oh, your Substack.
Yes, my Substack. They're mostly focused on California, but I'm starting to go out further to broaden to go across the entire West. Just now starting work on the next book, which will be a similar thing to the Enduring Wild, but instead of California, we're going to Utah.
Wow, you got a lot going on. You have an upcoming book in June 24th.
June 24th, there'll be a book tour. We're doing a really fun book tour event at Parks Project on
Oh,
June 25th,
yes.
which I know you're really familiar with.
Very familiar. Have hosted a few events there.
Yes, so June 25 we'll be at the Parks Project. We're going to partner with them and then the Armagosa Conservancy, which is this amazing nonprofit that does some really incredible work sort of on the borderlands between Nevada and California. So we're going to be raising money for them, talking about the book.
Amazing.
And yeah, there'll be beautiful like large format photographs for sale that all the proceeds will go to the Armagosa Conservancy. But yeah, we got a fun book tour this summer, and yeah, another book. I'm like step 1 of 3,000 for getting that book across the finish line.
One step at a time, just like hiking up that mountain.
Yes, it's like going up to Strawberry Peak, you know. It's just or going up to the pond. It's such a steep incline.
It is.
It's like, this is a tough little morning workout.
That last mile to Strawberry Peak is a doozy.
A doozy, especially in winter when there's snow on the ground.
Oh, you did it during
I've
snow?
done it in summer and winter, or spring and winter, but yeah, it's wild up there.
Yeah, I think the last mile of Strawberry Peak is 1,000 feet of elevation gain in the last mile. Whenever it is that specific stat, that proportion, you know it's going to be a sufferfest.
You know it's going to be switchbacks, like straight up the mountain.
Yeah, more like a straight line up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I am so there for your book tour when it happens at the Parks Project location. That Discovery Center is such a beautiful space. I already have so many amazing memories there. I think when we first met, actually, we met at the Jackson Market in Culver City.
Yes.
And then you were on your way to meet up with Keith, the founder of Parks Project.
Yes, yep. That
right?
was my first interaction with them and seeing the headquarters there, and I was like, this would be a perfect book tour stop.
Yeah.
So I think I'll be in conversation with Keith for
amazing.
for the book tour event. Yeah, he's been doing obviously incredible volunteer work for years and years and years, and so yeah, I'm really excited to see Parks Project take off, and you know they're really addressing some of the threats that these lands are facing now. So it's really it's been fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out Parks Project.
Shout out Keith.
Shout out Keith.
Shout out David, who runs that place.
David, Taryn, Gretchen. There's a lot of people there. I blanked out what I was about to say. It was, it'll come back to me. Oh, yeah, shout outs Park Project because I also joined them for their volunteer trail day event at the Baldwin Hills Scenic Overlook. That's what I forgot to mention or I was trying to come back to me. Yeah, that was about, I think it was like a month ago. And that was actually my first time like doing volunteer trail work with actual like shovels and different equipment and like leveling out the terrain. And I was like, oh wow, this is a good workout too.
Totally. I mean, and you know, volunteering has to be the best way to like deepen your place attachment to a landscape. If you're out there like building a trail or doing maintenance or pulling invasive species or you know, even just documenting like what trees are there, you know, like for scientific purposes, like that immersive experience on volunteering, like sweating, like working out. Is there any better way to connect with the landscape? I don't think so, you know? Maybe like if you're, you know, sometimes when you're camping or hiking or, you know, you have like it storms for 3 days straight and you're kind of like in the mud and you're just like, deep into it, you know, those can have really important, that's an important experience for place attachment, but like volunteering, come on, there's nothing better, right?
Especially after what Los Angeles County had went through at the beginning of January, the historic LA fire crisis. You know, the volunteer work should be happening all year round.
Right.
You know, obviously there was so much immense efforts, you know, closer to when the fires happened, but now is actually the time to help restore the trails because now I think in the Santa Monica Mountains, the areas that were burned and also the Angeles National Forest, they have actually opened up those opportunities for trail restoration and trail maintenance. I know there's so many nonprofits and conservation efforts going on right now. So it's a year-long thing, so if you can spread out like mixing in like group hikes, or like if you're like a lead out there, like mixing trail maintenance work, get people out there, because this is when the trails need us, is especially now here in
Yep,
LA
after
and
the
Los
fires.
Angeles.
If you're on social media, there's a social media account called LA Hikes. And
Shout outs Daniel, LA
shout out
Hikes.
Daniel. He's been putting together these really, really wonderful volunteer opportunities, doing trail maintenance,
Yep.
and just highlighting like what opportunities for volunteer work are out there.
He's been
So
connecting the dots.
yes, been connecting the dots. So just wanted to give that as we're doing shout outs.
I actually met him for the first time a few months ago.
Oh, cool.
He took me on this like secluded trek in Griffith Park, and I was like, I've never known about this side.
Wow.
Yeah, so shout outs Daniel. I know he mentioned that he's a friend of yours. He was actually at the podcast 5-year anniversary event. Did you know that?
What?
He was like in the corner, like on the side,
No,
like
I had
hella
no
like
idea.
discreet.
We've been trying to get together for months now, and I can't believe we were both there. That's crazy. I should have known that.
Yeah, I definitely. I talked to him about being on the pod. He's also very interested, so hopefully we make that happen with him soon. But yeah, his account is like an OG account as it relates to LA hikes and the history. Like it's a very special account that he's had.
Beautiful photography too.
Yeah. Oh, and you're a photographer too. That's how you guys connected.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Maybe just partnering up in different ways. So we'll see what happens.
And to go back to your book, The Enduring Wild,
Yes.
definitely want to highlight that a little bit more. Is there any particular chapters that you're just so excited for the readers to read about?
Yeah. So I mean, The Enduring Wild is like a visual journey. There, like I said, there's 100+ photographs, like a large, full double page spreads of these photographs from all these places I've been to, and then each essay is kind of like, I went from a person that knew nothing about BLM land to now I know a lot about BLM land. I've written the first mainstream book about BLM land that's
really?
ever been done. No one is writing, people aren't, thanks. People aren't, and that's part of the reason I wanted to write a book, is because there's just not enough storytellers telling the story of these landscapes. Like our best photographers are going to like Nepal and Yosemite in Australia and like some of the most insane scenery that like we have in the world, or they're going to like these remote places that really none of us can get to. And I'm grateful for those photographers that are going to the ends of the earth to capture these like really crazy landscapes and wildlife. But we just don't have enough photographers and writers going to these what I call forgotten lands, like these lands that are in our backyard right here in the West in California. They have some grand stories to tell, and I just didn't feel like enough people were telling these stories. And so, that was really the impetus for the book. So yeah, the book kind of unfolds like it's like my journey from the beginning until the 40-second trip I took to go visit BLM lands. It's sort of my journey discovering these places and writing about them. And usually there's a big idea. So I talk a lot about like reciprocity, the trouble with wilderness, the idea that we think of, like as we mentioned earlier, we think of nature being sort of out there, but we don't think of the nature in our backyards. And like, if we only think of nature out there, it allows us to sort of forgive the blemishes that we find all around us that actually need our help just as much as the nature out there does. I talk about the opening chapters, like my initial trips to the Mojave Desert. I didn't even really know much about the desert, if I'm being honest. Like I had gone to Joshua Tree, I had gone to Death Valley, but sort of all the desert around those two national parks, I always imagined being like the drive-by desert, sort of
the
like
drive-by desert.
Yeah, the drive-by, like you're going to Joshua Tree, or you're on your way to Las Vegas or Tucson or Phoenix or Utah, or going all the way back to Baltimore. I don't know if you've done that.
Oh my God, I
road
don't want to
trip.
make that drive.
Yeah, it's a long drive, but I sort of imagine the desert surrounding the national park, outside of the national parks, is sort of lifeless, sort of like a landscape on repeat. The same interchangeable shrub, mountain, desert, like just on repeat. And it wasn't until I really went out to these landscapes and started to slow down. I talk about it being like a pilgrimage, I was always a hiker. I was trying to get the most elevation gain, the fastest speed, how many miles could I cover in one day? Those were my like kind of missions as a hiker. And these BLM lands, especially in the Mojave and Colorado deserts of Southern California, you can't approach those landscapes in the same way. You know, like those landscapes, I talk about it in the book, but they sing quietly. And the only way to really hear the sound is to slow down. And so I started thinking of my hikes as like walks, and started thinking of them as like a pilgrimage. And so instead of walking like, 11 miles in a day, I would hike 2 miles and just go extremely slow, try to learn the plants, try to understand the history, try to, slow down enough to really see the place. And so I'm really excited for people to read, like, not just about my experience discovering these places, but some of the bigger ideas that I had to wrestle with as like a nature lover. Some of the preconceptions that I had and carried into these landscapes were kind of, you know, shot down by the BLM lands and what they require of you. So yeah, I'm excited for the book to come out. It's kind of one of those things where now that it's at this point, I'm just so glad that it's done and it's almost here.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
can just share it with the world, you know?
Oh, I can't wait to have the book in my hand.
Yeah, me too. I got my first advanced copies last couple weeks, and it's just so surreal to like see it and see the pictures. Like, I took that. I was there at that point. That seems crazy, you know? Like, I wrote all these words there. And I should also mention it'll be an audiobook as well, so
Oh,
people can
okay.
buy the book. And I hope it's the kind of book that people earmark, underline, they throw it in their car on the way out of town to try to get to some of these landscapes, and it gets beaten up. And I hope it's the book that just like gets lived with.
For sure, for
That's
sure.
my goal. It's like a beautiful book, but I also hope it gets beat up and marked up and tossed in the car, and
It endures all that beating.
yeah, it's like got its own enduring nature.
That's funny. And Forgotten Lands Project specifically is the website and the Instagram account.
Yep, Instagram,
Right.
Substack, and
Okay.
website. So I do a lot of advocacy work through social media, partnering with different nonprofits. Like my favorite one, the Conservation Lands Foundation. They're a national organization that exclusively works to protect, defend, and expand BLM lands. So they're the only one that's just working with BLM. So I was just in DC with them a couple weeks ago,
Really?
talking
Wow.
about the book and advocating for these landscapes. So, but what's so special about CLF, I'll just say real quick, is like they're a national organization, but they partner with 80 grassroots local organizations that are like on the ground doing the really important work. Conservation Lands Foundation gives them the tools and resources they need to like fight these battles to protect these places. And so, yeah, Forgotten Lands Project is mostly about advocating for these landscapes and documenting them and highlighting them so that other people experience them and then want to protect them.
That quote you said earlier, could you say it one more time?
Yes, it's Baba Diem. In the end, we will conserve only what we love.
I resonate so hard with that because when I began to think about, my mission and the purpose when I host these group hikes, these nature gatherings, it's just like that. It's if people don't know about these hidden gems, these local trails, how can they learn to love it?
Exactly.
Like you can't just like it, you have to love it in order to care, to even give a damn, to pick up that trash, host a nature cleanup, write a book. Like because I've heard this on other podcasts you've been on, and you actually had your own rephrasing of it. Do you mind actually saying the rephrasing that you say?
Well, I just talk about, I mean, I don't know the exact one, but like in the end, we'll conserve only what we love. But the way to love a place is to experience a place, and the way to experience a place is to get the hell out there
Yeah.
and see it and experience. Like what you're doing with Just Trek is exactly the idea behind Baba Diom's sentiment of like, you won't go out to Sandstone Peak if I had never been to Sandstone Peak and I heard there was a fire, the Woolsey fire blowing through there, I might feel like, oh, that's too bad. That's so close to where I am. Like that's tough. But like, because I've gone up to Sandstone Peak so many times and experienced the sunset there and walked when it was raining and walked when it was insanely hot and I was dripping with sweat and sitting up top there, like now when a fire goes through there, it's like, oh, what can I do to help that place?
Yes.
Like, what is there trail maintenance that can be done? Is there cleanups that can be done? Can I organize trips for other people to experience the magic of that place?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we're not gonna protect stuff that we don't know about. And BLM lands are completely forgotten by most. Most people don't even know they exist. And if they do, they've never really experienced them. And so what you're doing with Just Trek and what I'm doing with Forgotten Lands Project is pretty much the same. We're just focused on different public lands.
Yeah, because I remember when you were seeing these quotes of you only, conserve what you love, you only value what you experience, which leads to love. I was just like, damn, that hit hard. I was like, that's like what's happening beneath the surface when I'm hosting a group hike. It's not just the physical; it's like the emotional, the spiritual, that deep place attachment that we're hoping that you get from it, so that you become a better outdoor steward.
Yep.
So that hopefully that will lead into like caring for different public lands or trail restoration efforts. So yeah, just wanted to mention that, like, hearing you say that quote and also saying it in your own words was very powerful for me when I heard it on those podcasts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he has a whole long quote. It's about like what you're taught and what you understand. And I've sort of updated it to say like what you experience and what you love. Just kind
Hmm.
of, bridging it from 1968 to 2025.
Fast forward.
Yeah.
All right, so always on this show, we want the listeners to discover new places that our guests have done. Are you curious or craving a backpacking adventure? If so, I got something special for you. Highlander, a global hiking brand present in over 20 countries worldwide, is coming back to Big Bear Lake for its fourth year in a row, and I will be in attendance trekking the trails with everyone too. Step into the wild and challenge yourself on the stunning trails of Big Bear Lake, where every detail from logistics, food, water, and supply are expertly handled so you can focus on the adventure. Choose between 1 to 5 days on the trail and experience the beauty of California's San Bernardino Mountains like never before. After a day on the trail, unwind at beautiful campgrounds where you can enjoy yoga, massages, educational lectures, music, and fun activities. With every detail taken care of from start to finish, all you have to do is hike, connect, and embrace the journey. Use promo code JustTrek_HL20 to get 20% off any individual registration except Lyra format. Head to HighlanderAdventure.com and register now. So I'm so curious, Josh, and I know there's probably so many to choose from, but what are your top three BLM lands in California, and why do each stand out to you?
Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this Southern California focus because
Okay.
I'm guessing many of the listeners like live
It
within
can be
this.
California. It can be
Okay,
overall
okay, okay.
California. But if you want to focus on
Yeah, I'll
SoCal,
focus on more accessible places. So there's the closest accessible BLM land to LA is a place called Whitewater Preserve. It's right off the 10 freeway. It's 2 hours from the heart of Los Angeles, and it's managed by the Wildlands Conservancy. That's like the gateway into BLM land, which is the Sand to Snow National Monument. And so it's half managed by the BLM and half managed by the Forest Service. But you have the Whitewater River, which is running almost all year round. It's gorgeous. There's cottonwoods lining the banks. There's bighorn sheep. I mean, I've almost always seen bighorn sheep
ooh,
when I'm up there. And then you have like the big mountains right behind it that go up 10,000 feet into the San Gabriels. And so the Pacific Crest Trail rolls right through there, so there's lots of accessible hiking. Um, that would be one of my favorite spots because there's a little visitor center, there's picnic tables, ponds. It's a great place to go with kids in the
okay,
summer
good
because they have
infrastructure.
a lot of infrastructure, which is great. Bathrooms, picnic tables, ponds. There's a place where if you have young kids, like in the summer, it's really hot out there, but they have these like pools, natural pools that you can go and like the kids can splash around in. But amazing hiking. So that would be one. Whitewater Preserve.
Whitewater Preserve.
Um, if you're looking for something a little more rustic, you could say, or more open, there's another BLM campground in the Mojave Desert called Rainbow Basin. I'll actually highlight two, Rainbow Basin and Afton Canyon, because they're both outside of Barstow,
Okay.
California. So when you're taking like Interstate 40 out out east, and they're both accessible with two-wheel drive vehicles. Rainbow Basin is this really beautiful, like they call it Rainbow Basin because the rocks and like they're not only massive but they're very, very colorful. A lot of people know about Zabriskie Point in Death Valley,
Yeah,
which
very
is
familiar.
full of color. It's basically like a mini Death Valley in terms of color.
Really?
Like
Okay.
what's that Zabriskie Point? But then there's also uh,
There's Golden
Palette
Canyon. There's painted
painted. What's that called?
artist palette.
Artist Palette. Rainbow Basin's like a mini artist palette.
Right
Beautiful
on.
campground. So if you, I think it's like $8 a night, and all I should say this too: all BLM campgrounds are first come, first serve. So you can, and I've been traveling to these for years now, and I've never once been at a campground that was even close to being full. So if you want to camp on the weekend and you're like, where can I go? Check out Rainbow Basin, check out Afton Canyon. They're both in the Mojave, both have beautiful campgrounds with shade structures, pit toilets,
Wow.
lots of hiking trails. So that would be, if that could be two, that's my
Yeah, yeah,
second
yeah.
spot.
That's it.
If you want to get somewhere really, really far away, but that's incredibly beautiful, I would head up to the King Range National Conservation Area. It's in far northwest California. It's a 12-hour drive from LA, but there, like I mentioned earlier, it's a temperate rainforest. There's a beautiful river that flows there. There's 3 or 4 or 5 campgrounds that you can camp at. You're in the middle of like old growth Douglas firs, old growth
Wow.
redwoods, coastal prairie. The King Range is the longest undeveloped coastline we have in California. And so you just have this, it was protected because, like you were saying earlier with Strawberry Peak, King Peak is like 4,000 feet tall and it rises only 3 miles from the ocean. So you have this like insane ocean coastline with these mountains that rise steeply up against it, like a precipitous climb.
Ooh.
So there's, I think there's 80 or 90 miles of hiking trails, campgrounds, rainforest. I mean, it is one of the most uh, special landscapes in not only in California but in the entire West.
Wow,
It's a
that's quite a statement.
it's a long drive, but it's incredibly beautiful. And one of the essays in the book features the King Range and the indigenous Mattole that live there, and the way that the reciprocity that the indigenous had with the salmon, and then the reciprocity the salmon have with the forest and the ocean.
Mm.
So that's one of my favorite landscapes. I'm always highlighting that, but it's very remote and hard to get to. But if people want to get out to some of the most insane scenery in California, the King Range National Conservation Area is the place to go.
This King Range area, this is the Lost Coast general area, right?
Yeah, it's part of the Lost Coast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you're driving up if you're familiar with the Highway 1, and it goes all the way up the coast from San Francisco, and there's the point where it dead ends at the coast, and you go inland and you connect to the 101, and then the 101 takes you up to Eureka and Arcata. That section of land that never got a highway through it is called the Lost Coast. And there's a bunch of little towns in there, and a massive state park. Sinky-owned state park is there. And then the King Range National Conservation Area is BLM managed.
Okay, so let's recap real quick. So you just mentioned King Range in the far northwest corner in the Lost Coast region.
Yep.
And then you first mentioned
Whitewater Preserve, which
Whitewater
is
Preserve.
at the base of Sand to Snow National Monument, which is 2 hours from LA. And then Afton Canyon, which I mentioned Rainbow Basin is kind
Yes.
of like Artist Palette. And in Rainbow Basin, I should say, there's a campground, but there's amazing trails right from the campground where you can go through like a incredible slot canyon that is like requires a little bit of climbing. I've done it with the kids. It's pretty special. And then Afton Canyon is just on the other side of Interstate 40, and it also has a great campground, but the Mojave River flows above ground there
Oh, wow.
all year long. So you can go there, and I've seen bobcats there. There's trails. The train goes right through there, like the big train. So at night when you're going to bed, you're like every 4 hours you're hearing the Pacific train go through. So it's just a really, really magical places. So yeah, a couple of camping options: the King Range and Whitewater Preserve.
You hear that, Just Trick listeners? You better get on out
Get
there.
out there.
This man is dropping some of his the gems of the BLM lands. You got to remix it up, Yeah, go to your national parks, but I think just mix it all up, mix it in with BLM land and these specific recommendations, and I think you all might just fall in love with these BLM lands, just as Josh has.
That's the hope.
So, Josh, you've clearly gained tons of experience and knowledge out in the wilderness, especially in these much more isolated regions. Are there any go to hacks or habits or maybe pro tips that have helped you personally when you're deep out in BLM land or just in these like more backcountry type of public lands?
Yes, I will say there's an app called Onyx. It's ONX, and that I know it's not paid here, but Onyx app is so helpful. It's $30 a year, and what it does is it allows you to see what land you're on. Because I didn't want to take any photographs that were like accidentally on national park land or national forest land or private land. So I always needed to see what land I was on. And on Onyx, on the off-road app or the backcountry app, you can see it'll pinpoint your location and it'll help you see what land you're on. Also, you can download, so if I knew I was going to a certain location, like let's say Afton Canyon, like we just talked about, like I can go to Afton Canyon on the Onyx map and I can download an offline map because most of these places you go to, you're not going to have reception. And then I could use that while I was out there hiking, and it was like in real time, it still tracks you even if you're offline. And it tells you, you can zoom in to make sure like, oh, I'm still on the trail. Oh, there's a spring right here, or this
Ooh,
is how I
okay.
get back to the campground. Onyx is like, I've been using that for years, and it gets more, the quality is really good. It's not only can you see where the what land you're on, you can see like where the trail is. Like I've gotten lost a few times, and the offline map has always helped me get back home. So that's one is Onyx. You can also, the more research you do, if you're thinking about going to BLM land and you get on the website, the more research you can do about a place before you go, the better. Like even there's 14 BLM field offices across the state of California. They all have phone numbers, and each field office manages the land that is around that field office. You can call them and say, hey, what are the road conditions like going out to Afton Canyon? Is the campground open right now? Can I have a fire? All those questions they can answer for you. So I call the BLM field offices before I go on any trip,
Smart.
if I'm wondering about the road conditions or whatever. Um, but yeah, the apps and calling the offices and doing as much research as you can before you go is a big help. I will say real quick too, one of the things that's so special about BLM land is the ability to disperse camp. So disperse camping is just basically having everything that you need in your car. Some people sleep in their car, or they do, the van lifers can do it, but if I just have a little 2-person tent, and if you can be self-contained within that vehicle, you can almost camp anywhere on BLM land. You can park, set up your tent, walk, 100 feet off the road, set up your tent, and you can camp there. It's pretty amazing. That's like one of the most special qualities of BLM land is the ability to disperse camp anywhere you want.
That's like
But,
freedom.
huh?
Ultimate freedom.
Totally, it's total freedom. You just need to pack everything out that you brought in. You got to figure out a way to go to the bathroom. Um, you know, definitely follow leave no trace principles. And then if I know I'm going to be dispersed camping, that's another great way to another great question for the field office. Like, hey, I heard about dispersed camping. Do you have any spots that are already set up for dispersed camping? If you're out on a road like you guys were north of Joshua Tree, there's a lot of places where it's clear that like a vehicle's already been parked there multiple nights. There might even be a fire ring. That's the place to disperse camp. I've seen people do horrible things like just driving over wildflowers to get to like the top of a hill. It's like that's not dispersed. You can't just drive off anywhere and just run over brush. You got to look for previously disturbed areas, like a pullout or a turnaround or just like a little thing off the road. Um, yeah, those would be hopefully some tips that help people.
Is there any particular like equipment that is like a must-have when
Good
you're on
question.
these
Yes, good
BLM lands?
questions. I would say, I bring a portable toilet that I picked up at like REI, where it's like a tripod. You put this little thing in there and you can go to the bathroom, and then you can take your
Oh,
your thing out with you. Or, if you understand the principles of like how to properly dig a hole, to go in the hole, you still have to pack out your toilet paper. You should never bury
mm-hmm.
toilet paper. Um, yeah, I mean, you're going to need to be set up with a tent. If you're not sleeping in your car, a tent, a way to, you bring food, bring a big trash bag to haul out all your trash with. Um,
Tons of water, I
Tons
assume.
of water. Thank you for mentioning that. I have a 5-gallon water jug I picked up for,
Smart.
$40. I fill, even if I'm going somewhere that I think I'm gonna have water, I still fill it up. Because what if you break down out there? What if you
Mm-hmm.
get stuck? Like, you're gonna need water. And a lot, 10 million out of the 15 million acres of BLM land in California are in the desert. So in the winter, you're gonna be cold at night. In the summer, you're gonna be, just don't go out there in the summer. Let those places marinate for the
Sure, sure,
summer.
yeah.
Let the wildlife have the place to themselves, and then come back in November when it cools down at night.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all these tips because it's way different the experience when you go to these backcountry type of landscapes, these super, not even just isolated, like you're sometimes, from my understanding from your adventures to BLM lands, you're like the only person out there,
Yes, you are.
literally.
I'm so glad you brought up the sleeping bag, water, camp stove, like cooking gear, like everything you need. You're gonna have to take it with you. Um, and I'm so glad you mentioned being alone, because I would say, like, if you're interested in getting to BLM lands, start with all the campgrounds. There's 66 in California. Those have the infrastructure. Almost every single one is accessible with a two-wheel drive vehicle. They all have infrastructure like toilets, picnic tables, shade structures. Those are like they all are usually by trails that start right from the campground.
Okay.
Those are like the best gateways to BLM land, are those campgrounds. And if you're gonna get a little bit outside of there, go with someone else. Don't go alone. Don't do what I did several times, like, get with friends, go out there and have the experience together, because four minds thinking about a landscape is better than one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, thank you for highlighting all that. Yeah, because, it's a, to be able to adventure to these particular like BLM lands, it's like, it's so eerily beautiful when you're alone, but it's like, you really have to like properly prepare yourself,
Yes,
have the
yes.
right equipment, do your due diligence and research, and also go with a friend if you can.
Go with a friend if you can, for sure. I've been doing it so long now, I have to like transport my brain to like the 2020 brain, where I was kind of like nervous and
Mm-hmm.
a little bit overwhelmed by like the lack of infrastructure or lack of knowledge. But yeah, start at the campgrounds, go with people that you know, and that's those are the gateways.
So right now, I'd love to chat with you about a most recent Superbloom camping trip that you hosted with USAL Project. And for those not familiar, USAL Project is this online booking platform and community that provides experiences and goods for the modern nature enthusiast. I've been a big fan of theirs. I've met Michael Washington a few times at this Merrill event and also at his store in Silver Lake. I think I attended a few events. It was like a foraging hike. And also, I actually signed up last year for the
Yes,
Super Bloom camping trip that you were hosting, but they had to reschedule it because of the weather.
yes.
I remember how bummed I was because they rescheduled it, I think, to the following weekend or 2 weekends later. And I was like, I'm not available. And
Such a bummer.
it's funny that what I'm about to bring up is the very trip that I want you to talk about. And you brought this group out to the Carrizo Plain National Monument. So, what is the claim to fame of the Carrizo Plain National Monument? And also, could you share some of the highlights from this trip with us?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that was a bummer that we missed out on you last year. So the Carrizo Plain is like a 3.5 hour drive from LA. It's 250,000 acres, managed mostly by the BLM, but also by the Nature Conservancy and the state, California State Fish and Wildlife. So it's really this interesting place. It's the largest, last remaining native grassland we have in California. So when you're out there, it's like, I always describe it like almost like a skateboard ramp. Like, you have on one side of the range, you have the Temblor Mountains, and then they come down in like this flat plain that runs for 50 miles of just grassland, and then on the other side it rises up on the Caliente Mountains. And so you have these two mountain ranges that sort of flank this valley, and it's incredibly beautiful. The claim to fame to the Carrizo Plain is the Superbloom. When they get the right conditions for a Superbloom, or what botanists used to call the March miracle, before like social media sort of blew up this idea of the Superbloom. There's no better place in the world to see the Superbloom than the Carrizo Plain, because you get the mountains are covered in flowers, the valley's covered in flowers. I mean, it's one of the essays in my book is in 2023 I went to the Carrizo with one of the biggest Superblooms ever recorded with a botanist. So we were walking and she was describing like everything that we were seeing, and it was just this incredible experience, and I write about that in the Enduring Wild with some really beautiful pictures. Yeah, like you can see, it's like you can see the Superbloom in the Carrizo from space. It's like, just picture mountains painted in different colors. You've got the orange fiddlenecks, you've got the yellow goldfields and tidy tips, you've got the purple phacelia. I mean, it's just, you've got orange poppies. In addition to that, it's also you see Tule elk there, which are endemic to California.
Oh, there's Tule elk there?
Tule elk are there. They run through the monument. They were reintroduced. The story of Tule elk is kind of amazing. If we can do a quick side note.
Oh, absolutely. And what is elk exactly for people that are not as familiar?
So elk are like way bigger than deer. You know, they weigh from like 400 to 700 pounds. There's 3 species of elk. There's the Rocky Mountain elk, which you would see, you know, across the West. Then there's Roosevelt elk, which you see up by the Lost Coast, Northern California, Redwood National Park into Oregon. But then there's Tule elk, which is the smallest elk species, and they're endemic to California, which means they're not found anywhere else on Earth. Before sort of colonialism and hunting almost wiped them out, there's estimates from, you know, different explorer journals that there were 500,000 Tule elk just in California. So they roamed everywhere. And then shout out Michelle Fulner from the Golden State Naturalist podcast. She does a Tule elk episode where she's talking to a couple of experts, and they think their numbers dwindled down to 1 pair of Tule elk that were saved in this, like, on private ranch land, that were found in like this bog, and they think those were the last 2. And from those last 2, in the late 1800s, we now have several herds across California. The numbers are still ridiculously low, but they're coming back. And the Carrizo Plain is one of the places you can see Tule elk. You can also see pronghorn antelope, which, for those who don't know, is the second fastest land animal on Earth, behind the cheetah. So they can sustain speeds of 35 miles an hour for like 4 miles. You can also see barn owls. You know, it's San Joaquin kit fox, kangaroo rat, some of these endangered species that only live in the Carrizo. So it's like this place where there's incredible wildflowers. Then you have incredible wildlife, from endemic species to endangered species. Then you have this place called Soda Lake, which when it rains a lot, it fills up and becomes this lake. And when it doesn't rain, it's like a huge wide open salt flat. So I write about it in the book. It's also one of my favorite landscapes. If there's a 4th landscape, I would say go to Carrizo Plain.
Sounds like the place to be, especially all that wildlife.
It's pretty amazing. So I love the USAL Project and Michael and all the crew there, because one, they're doing an amazing job like building community in LA and now in New York, but they also give really accessible ways to introduce people to nature, whether it's like the foraging hike, or like Jason Wise does like a Griffith night hike,
yes.
Which is really cool. You can see like these flowers that kind of only open up in the evening. There's owls out there. And then they also provide these really cool camping experiences. So a lot of the excursions that I lead, I'm with people that have never camped before. There's no safer environment to learn how to camp when you're with a lot of other people, and USAL provides the tent, sleeping bag, pad. It kind of, the barriers to entry are a lot lower.
Very accessible.
Yeah, so this trip was really fun. It was different because there were almost no wildflowers. Soda Lake was totally empty, and it rained, sleeted, and it was intense winds the whole weekend. So intense we couldn't even have we usually have these epic campfires at night, and it's like a really nice way to commune together and to like share a meal. It was so windy we couldn't have a fire. We're walking through this like indigenous place called Painted Rock. It's got some of the most elaborate rock art in the world.
Ooh, I really want to see that.
Really a sacred space. The Chumash still use it for like ceremonials even to this day.
Wow.
So we were walking through there. There's like peregrine falcons and barn owls and great horned owls and this really sacred space. We're looking at these incredible pictographs, and it's like sleeting on us. Amazing. And yet still what I find so inspiring about these trips and the people that go on them is, there's no wildflower, there's no Superbloom, there's no really bloom at all. And it rained. We'd wake up in the morning to like 38-degree temperatures, cold, rainy, and people still had the best time. We still saw a lot of wildlife. We still got to go hiking. We still got to see sunsets. And, in non-super bloom years like 2025, you really have the place to yourself. Maybe we saw maybe 10 to 15 people across 250,000 acres. You kind of have it all to yourself. It's really special. I've been there in November when I was literally the only one there. Didn't see a single person or a single car. So, yeah, I love it.
And that's Mother Nature for you. Like you can't control it. And I
Yep.
think it's really important what you said. You show up regardless, and you appreciate it for what it is, and you make the most of it. Especially with other fellow like-minded people and outdoor enthusiasts. We're outdoor curious.
Yes, outdoor curious. That's a good term.
Yeah, outdoor curious. And I know I've been following USAL Project for a while. The guides they choose to partner with, the experiences they curate are top tier.
Totally.
Like they're killing the game.
Yeah, I'm really inspired by what they're doing. I feel really honored to be able to guide these trips. We were just in Death Valley, Carrizo Plain in June. We're going to go to the giant sequoias, to one of my favorite little. It's not BLM, so that's fine. It's also beautiful in the giant sequoias.
On the Superbloom or the non-bloom trip, I
Yeah.
guess, right, at the Carrizo Plain, you mentioned that you saw a Just Trek pin out there in the wilderness.
Yes, Liz, I think was her name.
Liz,
right? Yeah,
correct.
we're
Shout out to Liz.
Shout out Liz. She was an awesome person to have on this trip, full of life and adventure. But yeah, we were walking, doing this sunset hike, and I looked down and I just see a Just Trek pin. And I was like, wait, you know Just Trek? Like, and she's like, yeah, we're part of the community. And then eventually, like throughout the rest of that hike, I ended up having Just Trek podcast talks with like so many of the participants on the USAL trip. So
That gives me the biggest smile.
it's funny
Thank
that
you.
like all these worlds are so intimately aligned. I think that's one of the coolest parts about living in Los Angeles is you have Just Trek, you have USAL Project, you have Forgotten Lands Project. So many people are doing interesting things, and to be able to collaborate with one another is even more special.
That's what it's about at the end of the day, is merging the different communities, everyone sharing their different knowledges and specialties. And how was that feeling of just bringing these newbies, these outdoor curious people to these like natural treasures that you've been exploring, the past several years, and have a book about and have a website about? Like, what is that feeling like for you to bring them to these places?
I mean, I'm sure it's not that different than you bringing people on these hikes that have never gone up to Sandstone Peak or like the Strawberry Peak or Mount Baldy. Like, to take, and especially like, I love going to Death Valley. I love going to the big giant sequoias and National Forest Land and National Park. But like, introducing people that don't know anything about BLM land, introducing them to what these landscapes entail is like just seeing, like when our first night we went out on this sunset hike and you're looking out over Painted Rock and the grasslands just seem like they run for miles and miles, and you have these little foothills that look like little divots, but they're massive hills that like fill up the plain, and just these big boulders. And we're walking out on these boulders, and we saw 3 baby barn owls in like this massive nest, and we're passing the binoculars to each other, looking at these barn owls and taking in the sunset, hitting the different colors on the Temblor Range. And it's just, there's really no words for it. Like, people, not only do they not know about BLM land, but then watching them experience it for themselves. Like, I hope all of these participants that go out to the Carrizo Plain and other BLM lands, like, have these little moments where they fall in love and they want to go back and they want to take their family and friends back. And then, you know,
Exactly.
when a threat comes to the Carrizo Plain, they're more likely to engage with that threat. You know, that's the goal for me. So yeah, it's a magical experience seeing people's eyes light up and hearts light up to these landscapes that, you know, 5 years is not that long that I've been experiencing them. So to see it in other people's faces, what I got to experience is there's, I mean, truly nothing better. It's like taking my kids to see these places and seeing them light up. You know, like the Lost Coast and King Range is like, we call that our second home. Like my kids have been there so many times. They know what it feels like to camp on the ocean there. They know what it feels like to walk through the redwoods and to swim in the Mattole River that runs through there. Like, yeah, there's nothing better, right?
It really is the best feeling of the world because you're in your purpose, you're
Yep.
in your why of fostering that deep connection of these participants to this specific land so they can grow that bond, deepen that love, so that
Yes.
they can be hopefully a steward of it in the future.
Yeah, I mean, these are like our future politicians and decision makers and county supervisors and mayors, and like the people that are going to be making decisions about our public lands are the next generation. I mean, it seems so obvious, but like they're not going to make decisions for the environment unless they have experiences with the environment. And so to whether it's Just Trek or USAL or Forgotten Lands, like getting people out onto these landscapes has never been more important.
And with USAL Project, do you have any upcoming BLM land trips in the future?
So my next trip is June 20 to 22. We're going to the giant sequoias, which is just outside. It's kind of between BLM land and national park. That's going to be an epic trip. Camping, rivers, redwoods or sequoias that like they're so big you can walk inside them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's going to be an epic trip. June 20. And then the next big BLM trip is in October, going up to the Eastern Sierra to
Ooh.
see the fall. The aspens are, you know, they're kind of morphing from that green to like a fiery concoction of orange and red, and it's really beautiful. There's wild horses out there, hot springs. Yeah, we're gonna do it all. That'll be a special BLM trip in the fall, October.
October. Stay tuned, y'all. Check out usalproject.com. There's tons of diverse offerings and
Yeah, every month they'll post
everything.
like, these are the May events, these are the June events. So you don't always get like a 6-month lead time, but once they announce it, usually they sell out pretty quick. So
They do.
if you find a camping trip, jump on it.
Book it ASAP, especially if it has this man involved, Josh
I'll lead you
Jackson.
to some really special places.
So now I want to dive deeper into your inner thoughts on the current state of affairs of our public lands and also the future of them. What do you see as the greatest challenges facing BLM land today?
Yeah, that's
I know this is a lot for you because there's a
no,
lot going
no.
on,
There,
especially right now.
it's an important question because I'm not sure that our sort of that portfolio of 620 million acres of public lands has never been more under threat than it is right now.
Literally.
Literally under threat. So, you know, like I know a lot of people have been hearing about the Park Service layoffs. Well, that's also affecting National Forest. That's also affecting BLM land employees. So, you know, 800 BLM employees 800 people lost their jobs.
Yeah, and you don't hear about that. You always hear about the 1,000
The
national park
parks,
staff
yeah,
that got fired.
which is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, people get pissed about the national park layoffs because they've been to the national parks. They have this deep place attachment with Yellowstone or Yosemite or Redwoods or, you know, Joshua Tree. Like, if a mining company, I always talk about this, but like if a mining company wanted to mine on top of Half Dome in Yosemite Valley, there'd be riots in the streets
Absolutely.
around the world because so many people have come to Yosemite and fallen in love with it. But like when there's a mining operation in some of my favorite BLM lands, like in the Eastern Sierra and the Bodie Hills or Conglomerate Mesa, it's like there's like 40 of us that are like raising our fist up to like try to block the mine from happening. It's just because so few people have fallen in love with these places. That was a little side note, but yeah, so we have threats coming in all directions, especially on BLM lands. Employees are being fired. There's massive layoffs still coming. There are threatening to privatize some of the BLM lands. So one of the things they're talking about is it's they call it affordable housing, but it's basically BLM lands that surround any town over 5,000 people. They can go 10 miles in any direction from the town and sell off those BLM lands to developers. And what they're calling developing affordable housing, but we all know that 10 miles away from a town is like these landscapes that are mountainous, desert. I mean, you're not, those aren't places where you build roads to affordable housing, you know, like you don't, affordable housing is building up, not out, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the selling off some of our most treasured BLM lands to build affordable housing is literally on the table right now. You have the threats from states like Utah, which are bringing lawsuits straight to the Supreme Court to transfer 18 million acres of their BLM land to the state of Utah,
I saw that.
which thankfully the Supreme Court didn't even hear the case, but they're still going to go through all the system of courts to try to get back to the Supreme Court. That would be devastating because typically when a state owns land, when they face a deficit, they start selling off those lands. But they can't sell off BLM lands because they're federally managed. So yeah, it's like we have attacks coming on all fronts. The BLM is already incredibly understaffed and underfunded, right? So you have like they're kind of operating like from like BLM employees I've met are just doing so many different jobs because they're so understaffed and they can't keep staff. So they're underfunded, understaffed. The threats to selling them off have never been more real. The threats to transfer them to the states has never been more real. So yeah, we all need to like get our signs, start marching, like protest, post on social media, call your congressperson, call your senator, like leave messages when the open comment periods happen, like leave comments, you know, like there's so many things we can do. We just need more people doing them.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, what can we do as like the listeners and the community? Something simple yet powerful. And you just mentioned
Yep.
already some of that stuff.
Yeah, jump on. If you follow my Instagram, I'm always posting like opportunities to engage with public lands and BLM lands. If you follow my Substack, same thing there. But there's lots of other bigger organizations doing really important work. Conservation Lands Foundation, Outdoor Alliance, the Conservation Alliance, like really big organizations that are fighting for our public lands, and they're constantly giving really good tips for how to engage and how to fight back.
How timely your work in this upcoming book.
Yeah, I did.
My
You know,
goodness.
I've been writing this book during the Biden administration when, you know, we were getting new national monuments designated. Like, you know, that administration did a lot for BLM lands. A thing called the Public Lands Rule, which we definitely don't have to get into, but which sort of mandated BLM to think about conservation as much as extraction and grazing. You know, that's been eviscerated. Like, I'm just talking about BLM land, but there's so many things like the Environmental Protection Agency has like been gutted. Some of the environmental regulations that help slow down the process of grazing or mining permits has been gutted. I mean, yeah, we're being attacked like in every way that you could possibly be attacked.
That's very frustrating and stressful,
It's
especially for someone
stressful.
as deeply connected to these lands such as yourself. I remember seeing recently there was like a leaked strategic plan document by the Department of the Interior
Yep.
that looked pretty worrisome, and they tried to dress a lot of. There was a lot of coded language, which
Yes.
we kind of see through the BS, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the, you know, one of the things in that leaked memorandum was of shrinking national monuments or rescinding them altogether. And a lot of national monuments are managed by the BLM, including our newest one, Chuckwalla National Monument, which is right outside of Joshua Tree, in between the Salton Sea and Joshua Tree, and extends almost to the Arizona border. That's a really important sacred indigenous site and for a lot of tribes that call those lands home. And there's a lot of recreation opportunities, hunting opportunities, equestrian. It's like that monument coming together as 600,000 acres is a really important step in conserving those lands for future generations. And if they rescind that monument, it just opens it up once again to drilling and mining. So yeah, like that leaked memo, I feel like every day we're just waiting for more bad news to come.
Yeah, I think it's just going to get more intense, which means that the activism has to get more
Yep.
intense.
It's like, stop feeling sorry for ourselves, get off your fucking couch, and find a way to engage with public lands.
And you mentioning the tribes, perfect segue. Many of the BLM lands in California are the ancestral homelands of the native tribes. How do you think that reality should reshape the way we talk about how the lands are managed today?
That's a great question. You know, I came from somebody that not only didn't know anything about BLM land, but I didn't know anything about the indigenous stewards of these lands that have existed here for 10,000 years. Like this, so I was learning about BLM land, and at the same time like peeling back the layers of history. And you know, behind every layer of history you peel back is just a heartbreaking story of loss. These tribes have been devastated by murder, coercion, lopsided deals with the U.S. government and the state of California, displaced, taken to like these camps. I mean, like
The missions,
the
it's
missions, like
insane.
it's just, no matter how many layers you peel back, there's always this heartbreaking story of erasure and displacement and loss. And so for me, coming to grips with the original stewards of these landscapes, which by the way, they're all still here. They all still exist. They still love these landscapes. They still live here. You know, understanding their story shed so much light on the story that I wanted to tell about BLM land. So in every single essay in the book, there's always the backstory of the indigenous people that called these lands home and still call them home today.
Thank you for acknowledging them and incorporating them
Oh
into
my
the
God,
book. Yeah.
they're talk about place attachment theory. Like we have this place attachment with Debs Park and with some of the Griffith Park and places in Los Angeles. Like there's no deeper place attachment theory than indigenous storytelling that's been happening for thousands of years that have been passed down. I mean, there's this great book called Tending the Wild, and M. Anderson writes this beautiful line in there about how natives knit themselves to nature. Like we think of nature as like being out there and sort of separate from human interaction, but for natives it's like they have place attachment not only because they have stories that have unfolded over generations, but because they actually live on the land. They grind the acorns, they hunt the animals, they build these beautiful like weirs to catch salmon and salmon runs. Like
Those
they
canoes, those tamals to
they
cross to
they
the islands.
they
Yeah.
use the land to enhance the land. Like they did prescribed burning before prescribed burning was even a thing that we even thought about. Like these tribes, like it's called traditional ecological knowledge, and their traditional ecological knowledge goes way beyond even our most dedicated scientists. Like they have this their own understanding, but if you marry that with traditional ecological knowledge, like you have a more complete
Yeah.
immersive picture of how to manage the land. So luckily, you know, our last Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, is indigenous, and so a lot of the new national monuments are now co-managed and co-stewarded with the local tribes. So one of my favorite BLM landscapes in Northern California, Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, is actually they just added this addition called Moloch Loyak. It's like a 15,000 acre addition to the monument, and that's going to be co-managed by the local tribes with the BLM. And so I'm hoping, and that's happened in Utah and other places as well, but I'm hoping in Chuckwalla, I'm hoping as the years go on, we will start to see this shift where it's not just like BLM managing these lands or national park or national forest. It's those agencies partnered with local tribes who
Hmm.
have the knowledge deeper, that runs so much deeper than our knowledge ever could. So yeah, it's a bit. The indigenous storytelling is a big part of the book. In fact, in the closing chapter, I sort of wrestle with that idea of wilderness. You know, because I always thought of wilderness areas as like, and they are kind of the most protected areas we have, public land areas we have in the country. It's a radical idea that we set aside these areas that are sort of, they called it untrammeled by man. Um, but, you know, like that kind of flies in the face of indigenous history. Like they weren't, these lands were trammeled by man. These lands were like as I said earlier, the indigenous knit themselves to the nature. And so for the final chapter of my book, I'm sort of wrestling with like my idea of nature, wilderness versus like an indigenous perspective. And so I interviewed this native Pomo who's now become a friend, Joseph Byron. Uh, he talks so beautifully about the way that indigenous sees wilderness and nature, and I include that in the book. But he talks about how it's like this invisible umbilical cord that they have with the landscapes they call home. It's like this umbilical cord, just like a mother carrying a child, and that umbilical cord is the life that transfers between the two humans. It's like he described it like as that's how he feels connected to the landscape, like this umbilical cord that connects to the waterways and the trees and the wildlife that exists there. And it's like it's been severed, and it's finding the connection again. And so, yeah, it's a big part of the book, and it's been a big part of my learning experience. You know, I went from not knowing or understanding anything, and I still feel like I'm scratching the surface. But they're still here, and they have a really important story to tell, and I wanted to tell a small part of that story.
That's amazing that you had those conversations, in the process of these projects. I actually interviewed my first Indigenous person, Indigenous voice. It was a
Oh,
very
recently.
esteemed tribal elder. I think episode 81. His name is Alan Salazar, and he presided over the burial of that mountain lion
P22.
P22, and just how you felt like just learning their story, how they describe things. I'm just like, wow, like I'm getting the ultimate learning history lesson
Yep.
right now, and it was just so inspiring to just be in that presence and also just learn like one-on-one, just as you had a very intimate conversation with
Yep.
these folks too, and they're here and they're still doing the work.
They're
That's what
still
we need to
doing the work.
acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like every time I'm about to go to a new landscape, I'm about to go to Utah in a couple weeks here to some BLM lands there. It's like part of my research is learning the history of those landscapes and who the indigenous tribes are
So
that are
important.
still here, because the more you learn, the deeper immersive experience you can have when you go to a place.
And especially that as it relates to LA, the talk about fire, land management, the
Yeah,
prescribed burns. It's such a
yes,
huge topic now because
yes,
everyone's like talking about like we need to be like had been implementing already these prescribed burns in
totally.
certain areas of these the wildlands they call it, right?
Yep,
These neighborhoods, these environments that are out on the edge of the wilderness. These are the areas that are more prone
yep.
to these fires, these urban fires that decimated entire cities in Los Angeles County. So it's crazy how like people are going back in time, or not going back in time, but like now they're looking towards like the indigenous people, like, hey, what were y'all doing
Oh yeah,
before?
oh yeah. This isn't working. We need to figure out a way that's a way
Correct.
forward. Yeah.
So you have explored all types of landscapes, and the most special part of being out in Mother Nature are the animals that surround us. I'd love for you to share some of your most special interactions with the wildlife.
Well, certainly the most special time was I was in this BLM managed area called the Bodie Hills, which is one of my favorite landscapes in California, but doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, so it's harder to get to. But it's literally 12 miles east of the border with Yosemite, right above Mono Lake, right off the 395. And it's this high elevation plateau, like 10,000 foot peaks up there, but it's like a sea of sagebrush. There's not a lot of there's some pinyon pine and some juniper, but it's mostly just a sea of sagebrush. And I had gone up with a couple of friends to go photograph it and explore it and to see what kind of stories they had to tell there. And it's really remote. We had to walk it was like a 12-mile day of exploring. And I had heard that there were pronghorn antelope up there, but it's really rare to see them because, like I said earlier, they're really quick, very elusive. This is in the middle of nowhere, so they're not used to any human interaction. And we were on this long hike. We go up to this place called the Dry Lakes Plateau, and we're just wandering through this like dried up lake. And you can see the Sierra Nevada to the west. To the east is the Nevada line. And my friend just suddenly out of nowhere is like, hey, look, and we look up on the side of the hill, and there's a herd of 18 pronghorn antelope just staring at us. Like they had seen us, probably from the moment we came over the hill, they're just staring at us, and we were just. It was like one of those moments in nature that like feels like a slap in the face. Like you're not even sure how to react except to just stare and wonder and just be like, that is the second fastest land animal on earth, and we're just looking at herd. So I think there were 3 males in the group. They have these beautiful like charcoal covered horns and these black manes that are just so beautiful, and like these heart-shaped white fluffy butts. They're just like such a beautiful creature to look at. And so we just started slowly walking towards them because there's quite a bit of distance between us. And then this moment where they're all looking at us, and then just like out of nowhere they turn and start running. But they ran so fast and so closely together. It was the way I describe it in the book is like watching a school of fish move underwater. Like, you know how you see like thousands of fish and they're all just kind of like
unison.
They're moving like almost like as a block. That's what it was like watching these pronghorn race through sagebrush, because you know sagebrush, there's a lot of big plants, and then there's a lot of little pathways between them. And to see them like move up this mountain, it was just like, I mean, there
It's
were
like a
no
movie scene. It
yeah,
sounds
there were
like.
no words between us. You know, it's like we're out there. There's no one out there. You know, it's just like there's no one around. We hadn't seen anyone for 2 days, and all of a sudden just come upon this herd of pronghorn was just so special. I've been back since. Actually, last year I went with my sister to the same exact spot, and instead of these dry lakes, they had enough rain that the lake was full, and so birds are flying in. And then that same exact spot, we're just staring at the water, and I'd never seen up there with water, and a herd of like 24 pronghorn come down the mountain towards us and drink at the water's edge.
Oh, they actually went to the
Yeah,
water.
they went down to the water. So I have these photographs of like the dry
No
lake with the pronghorn
way.
in the distance. It's dry. The 2021 Tamarack fire was like blowing pink smoke across the landscape. I also have pictures from the same scene with the lake filled with water, birds flying in and out, and then the pronghorn just coming down right there. I mean, we were just like, so the same moment, same landscape, completely different seasons. You know, that's probably like my most memorable, like jaw-dropping moment with wildlife.
I'm having a hard time processing when you're like painting this like such a beautiful picture, because as I've scrolled through your Instagram feed, I've seen like a lot of photos of wildlife and herds, and
Yeah,
I'm like, that makes so much sense, because where else would all this wildlife be in herds? Like only in the most remote landscapes
totally.
where where they're totally undisturbed.
Yeah, there's a lot of open land. Like these animals need like hundreds of thousands of acres. That's like just like P22 got trapped in Griffith Park. It's like their habitat's so much bigger than that historically, you know. But there are places, especially on BLM land, where you have these large swaths of open habitat for these creatures to roam and to sort of subsist in a way that they have for thousands of years.
Yeah, I've seen on an Instagram post, a previous one, like wild horses too. Like
Yeah.
I think I read that. Your photos and the captions you attach to them, I can't tell you, like I'm so immersed when I read it, and I'm
Oh,
just like, that's why you see me, like I'm so compelled to like write these certain comments,
oh yeah.
on the
Thank you
post. I'm
so
like,
much.
damn, that was beautifully said, and what a beautiful photo.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's yeah, like I said, these stories need told, and we need more storytellers out there telling them.
I feel like you might have answered my next question, but I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna ask it
Yeah.
anyway. So I couldn't help to ask this because it's a play off your projects, but which forgotten land experience was the most unforgettable for you, and why?
I think the Bodie Hills.
Is the Bodie
Yeah,
Hills?
because the Bodie Hills are so special because it's a high altitude landscape. Over 300 nights a year are below freezing. So like you can be there in the dead of summer and it's like 24 degrees at night. Um, it's got aspen groves. It's like a sea of sagebrush, which has like, you get like these hints of, you know, like lime and all the smells of the sagebrush. And you have wild animal, you have bi-state sage grouse out there, which if you want to see a crazy picture, just look up bi-state sage grouse mating. And the way they mate, it's incredible. Like the males do this elaborate thing with their bodies that is takes your breath away. It's so beautiful to look at. Not the actual mating part, just the pre-mating part.
But is that so?
Yeah, the Bodie Hills is just a magical landscape. There are 2 creeks flowing through there. There's, incredible wildlife. You're up at like 10,000 feet. In the middle of the Bodie Hills, which is BLM manages, a really tiny state park where you can see the old Bodie mining town with hundreds of structures still available to see. So a lot of people go in just to see the mining town, which is pretty spectacular. But it's surrounded by BLM land, and that's just, there's nothing about it on the BLM website. It's really just really remote. And so I had some help with Friends of the Inyo. It's a great nonprofit that does work in the Eastern Sierra. They advocate for the Bodie Hills because there are a lot of potential gold mining projects that would really destroy habitats for the pronghorn and bi-state sage grouse, and they do really important work. And so they kind of help me understand like the landscape itself, the history, and how to access it. And so getting there and just seeing it for the first time, it was like one of those moments that I was like, it was one of my first BLM trips. And so at that point, I had no idea what BLM landscapes even looked like. And to get up there and see it, it's just like, oh, if this is BLM land,
Yeah.
there is a grand story to tell here, and I have a long ways to go.
I can just feel the massive impression from that experience just like radiate from your chair to my chair.
Oh man,
right
I've been
now.
there in so many different seasons. That's what's cool too. You can go there except for winter when it's closed. But yeah, spring, summer, and fall, you can't beat it.
Bodie Hills for the record.
Hit me up on Forgotten Lands Project if you want to try to get there, because you'll need some assistance.
Yeah, it sounds like you need some super insider insights and tips.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
All right, guess what?
What?
It's time for the rapid fire question
let's
section.
Do it. I've been waiting for this.
Is this your favorite part of the show?
It's one of my favorite parts.
All right, so the way it works, I know you're a bit familiar, but just to break it down, rapid fire questions, answer with 1-word answers or short and concise answers. And we have 2 rounds. Round 1 is outdoor focus, and then round 2 is more personal.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yeah, ready. Let's do it.
You ready, rock steady?
Wreck steady.
Wreck steady?
I'm wrecked and I'm steady. I'm rock steady, wreck steady.
Wreck steady, rock steady, same thing. You know I love saying that. All right, so let's get into it. Favorite trail snack?
Cashews.
Trail runners or hiking boots?
Trail runners.
Desert or deserted island?
Desert.
Waterfalls or lakes?
Lakes.
Rock scrambling or surfing loose scree?
Rock scrambling.
Epic day hike or epic backpacking trip?
Epic day hike.
Favorite camping meal?
Ramen.
Ramen.
Ramen
Yeah.
every time.
Never fails. Dawn or dusk?
Dawn. Easy.
Mountain lions or grizzly bears?
Oh. Grizzly bears.
Taco Tuesday or Waterfall Wednesday?
Taco Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. Greatest fear on the trail?
Mountain lions.
Most underrated public land in California, in your opinion? Take a moment.
Underrated. I'm going to say BLM lands in the Eastern Sierra.
One BLM spot you'll never stop going back to?
King Range National Conservation Area.
King Range. One conservationist who inspires you?
One.
Just one. I know there's so many for you, but just off the top.
I'll say Aldo Leopold.
Aldo Leopold.
Yeah.
For the record. Music artists you want to trek with? This is always a stumper.
I know I've thought about this before. Maybe Kendrick?
Kendrick, yes! That's so epic.
I feel like he'd have
Keeping it LA.
I feel like he'd have some really insightful things to say about all these places around LA.
That would actually be a fascinating trek with him because he's so philosophical. He's so deep. There's so many layers to him.
Totally. It's like I didn't have to think too long.
Yeah, he's like this generation's Tupac, you could
Totally.
say.
100%.
One word you hope people feel after reading The Enduring Wild.
Peaceful.
Ideal outside temperature.
62.
62. Very particular. All right, that concludes round one.
Yes.
We take a quick 15-second break and then we'll jump into round two. All right. Do I got any water in my LaCroix? The sun is beaming now, y'all. And we are, as we record this episode, it's May. I was supposed to make the joke earlier. May gray. We got June gloom coming up. And then no sky July. But right now, on the 1st of May, don't mean to date the podcast, but the sun is beaming down now.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's giving us energy to finish off strong.
Yep.
All right, round two.
Yep.
You ready?
Ready.
Ready, rock steady?
Rock steady.
Not wreck steady?
Wreck rock.
Wreck rock steady, all right. Favorite comfort food?
Ice cream.
Favorite cartoon show growing up?
Smurfs.
Oh, I love the Smurfs too.
That might date
Great
me.
answer. I mean, I'm dating myself too. Smurfs is legendary. Favorite emoji?
The
Prayer hands?
prayer hands.
Or the two high five hand clap?
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's when someone made that joke, I was like mind blown. I was like, oh wow, it could also be that. Book you are currently reading?
Sand County Almanac
Sand County Almanac?
by Aldo Leopold, who I just mentioned.
Ah, the conservationist.
He's fresh on my mind.
What's your hidden talent?
Damn, what is a hidden talent? I'm really good at ping pong.
Oh, you're a ping pong dude.
Yeah,
Ping pong is quite the activity. I enjoy it as well.
yeah.
We should do a round sometime.
Let's do it. Well, that's maybe my only hidden talent.
That'll be our off-trail hang,
Yeah.
ping pong.
Ping pong.
Ping pong and a beer.
Yeah.
App you're currently using the most besides Instagram?
Probably Onyx.
Onyx,
Yeah.
the offline map
Yeah,
for the BLM
I
lands?
use it every day as I'm researching trips. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely download it. You said it's $30 a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nothing when you consider it's for a year.
Totally.
That's the key
It's worth
thing
it.
to remember. If you could be any animal, what would you be?
Mountain lion.
Wow, a lot of mountain lion
The
answers.
same thing I'm the most scared of is what I'd want to be because I'd feel like the apex predator.
Oh my God. I did Mount Islip deep in the Angeles National Forest about a month and a half ago.
Okay.
100% I'm sure there was a mountain lion that growled at me that I felt it was just as close as this bush. It was a low growl, and I think it was protecting a den of its cubs or its babies because I verified it with some other people coming up the mountain. I was like, did y'all hear like growling in that particular area near that fire road? They're like, oh yeah, I heard that too. I thought I was hallucinating, and I was like, okay, I heard it as well. It was definitely a mountain lion,
Oh
like
my God.
in the brush.
That's what I'm most scared of and also what I'd want to be.
I've heard them do the loud chirping sound, but never in my trekking years, the past 8 years, had I had it actually growl. Like
right next to you.
My head was literally like, and then my heart rate spiked up, and I was like, I'm just gonna keep hiking towards the ridge.
Yes. Yeah, I've never encountered one. I've encountered bobcats that have like hissed at me, but I've never
Oh, really?
But they're so little, you know.
Yeah, those bobcats, they're the most
I don't
athletic,
wanna-
acrobatic creatures.
I don't want to mess with one, but it's not as intimidating to see a bobcat as it would be to see a mountain lion or a grizzly bear.
Oh, we got off track. All right, back to the rapid fire. If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to? And it can also be a period that you didn't live in.
Probably like early 1800s before like colonial settlers came to California.
Great
I
answer.
want to see those salmon runs, those legendary salmon runs where you could like cross a river on the back of a salmon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to go there.
I love salmon, by the way.
Oh.
It's like one of my absolute
If you
favorites.
love salmon, you're gonna love the King Range essay in the book 'cause it's all about salmon.
I lived in Seattle for a little bit, and that was my diet. Like every other day was salmon.
I know, I love eating salmon too. My kids love it.
All right, describe yourself in 3 words.
Adventurous, quiet, passionate.
Awesome. And here's the final question of the rapid fire question section. You ready?
Ready, rock steady.
Rock steady, rock steady. Favorite sound?
Western meadowlark.
What a specific answer.
The greatest songbird on earth, I think, to me. Also, you can find them in the Carrizo Plain and all over BLM land in California.
All right, I love how you answered the question. So specific, you named the actual bird.
Yep.
And as the birds are chirping right now,
Yeah.
how appropriate.
I don't think there's western meadowlarks right now, but yeah, the beautiful yellow breast and the sound is mesmerizing.
All right, Josh, that concludes the rapid fire question section. You survived. How do you feel?
Feel great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, of course,
This
of
has been
course.
so much fun.
Yeah, so now we're at the end of the episode, but before we conclude it, I always turn the spotlight back to the guest, Josh Jackson. Do you have any final words? The floor is yours.
My final words would be to get out there. Like if you there's so many threats happening on all of our public lands right now, and like there's all these little ways that you can engage with those threats by, like some of the stuff we mentioned earlier, but like the best thing you can do is just to go outside right now, plan a trip, get out there, remind yourself of why these places are important. You can write letters, submit comments, call your congressional person, but like nothing's gonna engage you more to make a difference by planning a trip, whether it's Debs Park, your backyard, whether it's BLM land or a national park or a state park or wherever the place that you like to go is. Just go, get out there and remind yourself of why these places are so important and what makes them so special.
Powerful words, powerful final thought. Just go, get on out there, just trek.
Just trek.
There you go. Got to end it like that, right? But Josh, it's been such an honor to have you. Your knowledge, your deep passion with your two projects, the Forgotten Lands project, Enduring the Wild. Like, it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I feel like it's also been long overdue since we first met, but I'm glad that we're having this convo now, especially in the specific climate we're in as it relates to the threat of BLM lands.
Exactly. I hear you, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be with you. Thank you. Speaking of emojis, thank you for everything Just Trek is doing
Prayer
to
emojis.
get people out into nature. That's what it's all about, and I'm so happy that we could finally collaborate on the podcast. And I hope people have learned some things about BLM lands and are more prone to get out there.
And more importantly, I can't wait to join you
Yes.
on a BLM land excursion adventure.
Yes.
So I can see the grandeur and majesty myself.
Yes, I can't wait to have you.
All right, everybody, that concludes another episode of the Just Trek podcast. Josh Jackson, Forgotten Lands Project, The Enduring Wild, Just Trek podcast. Elevation is our recreation. And that is it. We are out. Peace, y'all.
Peace. Woo, woo.
Y'all like this raven feather? Josh placed it there. Good stuff.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
Thank you so
we killed
much.
it. That was amazing.